It's clear that after Martha arrives at Mount Vernon in April of 1759, there's a lot of management that she has to do. When she marries George Washington, she brings with her to Mount Vernon 12 house slaves. And that is really almost an unimaginable luxury.
If you were a visitor to Montpelier, you would enter here at the front door, and you would be shown immediately into the Madisons' great drawing room. Mrs. Madison had many lady friends that she would invite here. Margaret Baird Smith was a favorite of hers, and the daughters of Thomas Jefferson were also frequent visitors.
She said, "The hand of God and nature have been kind to my Sherwood Forest, but I can improve upon it."
Unfortunately, the train ride was very devastating for the family. They were about a mile outside of Andover. An axle rod broke on the train and it slid down an embankment. And as I understand it, Benny was a child, he was moving about, but this was within 5 minutes of the train ride beginning. And when the train rolled down, he was hit in the back of his head very severely. And Benny did not survive the crash.
Mary helped to basically showcase what her husband had done, how far he had come from that one-room log cabin in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, to this beautiful house, a very comfortable house.
The Hayeses would have hosted a number of political figures here for dinner, including future Presidents Taft and McKinley.
Always when he conducted business, the door stayed open to the living quarters, and Ida stayed in the living quarters, but she could hear what was going on.
This is where Edith and TR slept, and so this would be the master bedroom, as it were. But clearly, as you can see, the light streaming through the boards, it is no more better appointed than any of the other rooms.
This is where Helen Taft would have planted the first cherry blossom tree that came with the shipment of 1912.
This is the birth room of Edith Bowling Wilson. This was the bedroom of her parents.
Warren would stand in the middle here on the steps, the top step, Florence right beside him. And they would wave to the crowds who were parading down Mount Vernon Avenue toward his house.
We're standing in a courtyard area that would have been a flower garden and roses that Grace would have tended to in her free time. The building right beside us is where Calvin Coolidge lived as a boarder while working as a lawyer in Northampton.
The first time that the Hoovers came to Rapidan Camp was by horseback. There were no roads into the mountains. They just came in on horseback on a horse trail.
This is Eleanor Roosevelt's sleeping porch. It's a very important area here at Valkill Cottage.
My grandfather moved with what my mother once described as something approaching the speed of light, and grabbed the cake plate and ran over here and rang the bell on the front door in the hope, of course, that my grandmother would answer the door, and she did. And she invited him in, and that's the beginning of their formal courtship in 1910.
Shortly after Lyndon Johnson became president, the ranch was dubbed the Texas White House, and life at the ranch revolved around the home. And to show you the importance of the ranch and the home, the Johnsons returned home 74 times during Johnson's 5 years as president. Mrs. Johnson, as First Lady, loved to show off the Texas Hill Country and her home.
Not much has changed here in Plains, Georgia, since the President and Mrs. Carter grew up here in the 20s and 30s. If we were to take away this asphalt street here in front of the stores and have a dirt road right in front of them, it would look very similar to a photograph of Plains circa 1925.